Flagler County Board of County Commissioners to meeting. We're meeting here in our chambers. Commissioners, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our county attorney, Mr. Hadid. Mr. Hadid, would you please initiate the shade meeting?
Yes, good afternoon. Oh, yeah, we need, well, that door doesn't need to be shut until, we actually go into the shade meeting, but it will be. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. We've been through this before most recently, but there are a number of things that I have to do that are required by the statute. One, as you already know, legal counsel, that is ourselves, the legal department, our outside counsel, we have sought and are seeking still input from the county commission relative to the pending case, specifically as it relates to settlement negotiations. So we had our mediation. I know you're aware of that. And we need your input on the mediation direction that we're going to pursue in order to see if we can reach an accord that will terminate the case. Right now, just so you're aware, the litigation has been placed on hold. And it will give us a time, not forever, give us time to figure out what we want to do. It's a very complicated matter. And we have tried to take as much of that technical information and translate it in the most usable form for you. Because we are going into a shade meeting, there are certain requirements. You have before you a court reporter who will be taking this down. By law, the court reporter will take down verbatim everything that we say and include it in a confidential transcript. The transcript becomes public when the entire case is over, including any appeals. And there's no way to know when that time will come. But when that time comes, it will be known, it will be told if anybody wants to know. Might come under a county attorney report, for example, or a memorandum, or a notice from the clerk, or something like that. There are only certain people that are permitted to be in this room. Again, specified by statute. This is not any choice that we make. It's not in our hands. The legislature has prescribed who may be present. So obviously you, the commissioners, the court reporter, I'm sorry to say, the clerk of the court, no offense whatsoever, the statute says the clerk of the court cannot attend this meeting. No representative of the clerk can attend this meeting. Carlos, who operates all of our, meeting stuff, he also has to absent himself. Obviously, all the lawyers can be present. Today, you're only going to have two of the lawyers, myself and Mr. Moylan, and the county administrator is permitted to be present. Jorge Salinas is not permitted to be present by the statute. No one else is permitted to be present by the statute. Now let's talk about the actual way in which the shade meeting occurs. And this is really for the benefit of the public who's watching or who want to look at it later on video to understand, well, what are the mechanics of this thing? We're going to give you, through Ms. Petito, an overview of what transpired in the mediation, and she will give you a broad overview. That's pretty much an introduction. And then we will go to specific items from the mediation where we, that is the lawyers particularly, but also I know Ms. Petito would be interested, to hear your reaction to those things. You're not voting, you're not permitted to vote. You're not, and we're not looking for a consensus, you're not permitted to have a consensus. I know it sounds unusual, but that is what the statute requires. Each of you individually are permitted to comment on these specific things that will be brought to you, including general questions about settlement. So general questions about settlement and very specific things. We are not permitted to talk about anything else under the statute except for litigation expenses. So you may want to talk about that. Not our intent to talk about that, but you are permitted by law to talk about that and to ask us questions, and obviously we're going to answer them. All right? So that's all. That's all we can do. It's a very constrained, artificially controlled, because it is an exception to the Sunshine Law, therefore strictly applied. And the legislature says, okay, if the local government wants to actually talk about it, I mean, where they're trying to find consensus and do motions and so forth, decide what they want to do, you can't do it here. You have to do it in a noticed public meeting so the public can observe it. So that is how the public interest is protected when the legislature allows you to do a shade meeting, but only on very strict grounds. Now, you remember last time, preceding the mediation for this, before we went into the mediation, we had a shade meeting and we got 5 individual perspectives, and we processed that and went into the mediation. And now we're looking at the fruits of that labor conducted by Ms. Heidi Petito as the county administrator, your administrator, our outside counsel, an independent mediator, and the representatives of Captain's Barbecue. Because we completed the mediation, and these are the terms I use. You know, when we do this kind of legal work, we develop these shorthand phrases. We are at what I call a 2-step point right now. When we did the previous mediation meeting, shade, we were at 1 point. What does that mean? Well, the 1 point mediation that we did before, there weren't any votes. We didn't need any votes. The votes would not have been appropriate as we're getting ready to go into mediation because it would have been available for the entire public. So we never did the second step of having a robust public meeting. It did not fit. It would have severely compromised your legal interests. If one of you said, let's do it, I would have strenuously attempted to persuade you, no, not to do that. But now we've completed the mediation. So we're what I call the 2-step. The 2-step is to tell you what happened at the mediation, and the second step is you get to form consensus and form motions that will allow us to move forward. Well, Commissioner Andy Dance, much to his credit, he looked at the notice that was published after I sent a general guidance out, and he said, wait a minute, there's nothing in here about our doing the second step. I mean, he didn't call it that. And I looked at the notice and said, oh my gosh, how did the 2-step got left out? So this morning, I was working on other critical things for you. I could not attend the board meeting. So I very quickly said, and I did it like off the seat of my pants, oh my gosh, it's not advertising the 2-step. So I gave Lucy the guidance on publishing it. But we're publishing it too late for the public to really understand. We tried to clarify, we're not going to be able to do the 2-step today. We're just not going to be able to do it. So when we go into public session, we're just going to do what we did last time, which is we announce for the record, everybody comes back in. We let Carlos know that we're done. He'll come back in. The clerk's office, we'll let the clerk's office know, and they'll come back in. We'll give them a little bit of time to get here. We'll give them an adequate time. We don't necessarily want them to run, do a sprint. So when we come back, it will be to announce that we have completed the shade meeting. You're required to do that by statute. And we'll confirm who was here, right? That it was this very limited audience, and the court reporter is here, and then we will discuss, you will discuss, when you want to come back for the 2-step. We'll have to advertise it. okay? So there will be a two-step. But it's not going to happen today. It's going to happen at a time that's convenient for you. So, let me just check with Sean to see if I've missed anything about I don't have any notes in front of me. This is, I've done this stuff a number of times. And we haven't had to do many shade meetings in Flagler County, actually. Very, very infrequent. Okay, so let me just check with Sean. Okay, yes, he reminded me of a very important thing. See, that's why it's good to have someone like Sean, right? Angel on your shoulder kind of thing. Okay, we need to provide an estimate of the time that we're going to take in the shade meeting. Now, we don't really know. I estimated 90 minutes, okay? I think it may take less and it may take more. There's no way for us to know. The intention is to review each one of these items that were vetted as a part of the mediation. So it's a number of items. It's not an infinite number of items, but we're going to need to go through them each. And we don't know what your dialogue will be, what your questions will be. So I think 90 minutes is a fair number. But you're permitted to say, no, Mr. Deed, we're going to do this in an hour, or no, Mr. Deed, this is going to take a lot. It may take 2 hours. It's really up to you. My estimation, which I believe is a fair estimation based on my experience, is 90 minutes.
Yes, Ms. Sullivan,
Wouldn't that,
put your mic on.
okay. The only reason I would question that is, it seems to me that that estimate was basically if it was a two-step process.
No,
That's not the reason for the estimate of the meeting.
no, because the public meeting part is totally plus and independent. It's an addition to the 90 minutes, if you were to do it
There would
today.
have to have been some way to indicate when that would have occurred to the public so they could get here.
What he's saying,
That's
that's why we're not going to do it.
So I don't know if it's needed to have that. It might be 90 minutes, it might be 6 hours.
Well, we have to state it, and actually, you hit on the reason why, the rationale of the legislature. Because if somebody is following this, they know, okay, it's going to be about an hour and a half.
Right.
But they know from our comments,
That's
it's
not going to happen today.
Yeah, but it's not going to be exactly. The person listening knows because of the comments, well, it may not be exactly an hour and a half, but it tells me that I need to get it in my radar about an hour into it, right? Are they still doing it? If they're interested. Yeah. Oh, yeah, but yeah. Is that what you're asking? We're still going to have the public meeting, but there'll be no vote.
Not after this meeting.
Yes, we will. We're required to.
Oh, that's right, just a little
I'm
short.
sorry. You
little
have
short.
to have a public meeting to announce that you did the shade
But
and
we
the
already
right
know.
people were here.
Okay, I'll stop.
Okay?
We already know we're not going to have a full meeting. after
That's
this
correct.
meeting.
The estimate on that meeting is not required.
Right.
If you wanted to spend days doing it, you could. I mean, I'm not trying to give you a horror show, but just by way of extreme example.
Okay.
Well, I'll call the shade meeting to order and ask the court reporter and our IT people to depart the room.
The clerk, and you're estimating the 90 minutes, sir?
And, yes, and I believe we'll be in session for 90 minutes.